A plan. Outside in the low-ceilinged hallway, Min dug her nails into her palms at the first piercing cry from the room. She took a step toward the door before she could stop herself, and when she did stop, tears sprang up in her eyes. Light, help me. All I can do is make it worse. Egwene, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Feeling worse than useless, she picked up her skirts and ran, and Egwene's screams pursued her. She could not make herself stay, and leaving made her feel a coward. Half blind with weeping, she found herself in the street before she knew it. She had intended to go back to her room, but now she could not do it. She could not stand the thought that Egwene was being hurt while she sat warm and safe under the next roof. Scrubbing the tears from her eyes, she swept her cloak around her shoulders and started down the street. Every time she cleared her eyes, new tears began trickling along her cheeks. She was not accustomed to weeping openly, but then she was not accustomed to feeling so helpless, so useless. She did not know where she was going, only that it had to be as far as she could reach from Egwene's cries. "Min!" The low-pitched shout brought her up short. At first, she could not make out who had called. Relatively few people walked the street this close to where the Damane were housed. Aside from a lone man trying to interest two Seanchan soldiers in buying the picture he would draw of them with his coloured chalks, everyone local tried to step along quickly without actually appearing to run. A pair of sul'dam strolled by, Damane trailing behind with eyes down. The Seanchan women were talking about how many more Maras Damane they expected to find before they sailed. Min's eyes passed right over the two women in long fleece coats, then swung back in wonder as they came toward her. Nynaeve, Elayne, none other. Nynaeve's smile was strained. Both women had tight eyes, as if they fought worried frowns. Min thought she had never seen anything as wonderful as the sight of them. "That colour becomes you," Nynaeve continued. "You should have taken up dresses long since, though I've thought of breeches myself since I saw them on you." Her voice sharpened as she drew close enough to see Min's face. "What is the matter? You've been crying," Elayne said. "Has something happened to Egwene?" Min gave a start and looked back over her shoulder. A sul'dam and Damane came down the steps she had used and turned the other way, toward the stables and horse yards. Another woman with the lightning panels on her dress stood at the top of the stairs, talking with someone still inside. Min grabbed her friends by the arms and hurried them down the street toward the harbour. "It's dangerous for you two here. Light, it's dangerous for you to be in Falme. There are Damane everywhere, and if they find you—" You do know what Damane are? Oh, you don't know how good it is to see you both. I imagine about as half as good as it is to see you, Nynaeve said. Do you know where Egwene is? Is she in one of those buildings? Is she all right? Min hesitated a fraction before saying, "She's as well as can be expected." Min could see it all too well if she told them what was happening to Egwene right that moment. Nynaeve was as likely as not to go storming back in an attempt to stop it. Light, let it be over by now. Light, make her bend her stubborn neck just once before they almost break it first. I don't know how to get her out, though. I found a ship captain who I think will take us if we can reach his ship with her. He won't help unless we make it that far, and I cannot say I blame him, but I have no idea how to do even that much. A ship, Nynaeve said thoughtfully. I had meant to simply ride east, but I must say I've worried about it. As nearly as I could make out, we would have to be almost off Tommen Head before we were clear of Seanchan patrols completely, and then there's supposed to be fighting of some sort on Ormoth Plain. I never thought of a ship. We have horses, and we do not have money for passage. How much does this man want? Min shrugged. I never got that far. We don't have any money either. I thought I could put off paying until after we sail. Afterwards. Well, I don't think he'll put into any port where there are Seanchan. Wherever he threw us off, it would have to be better than here. The problem is convincing him to sail at all. He wants to, but they patrol off the harbour too, and there is no way of telling if there's a Damane on one of their ships until it's too late. Give me a domain of my own on my deck, he says, and I will sail this instant. Then he starts talking about drafts and shoals and lee shores. I don't understand any of that, but as long as I smile and nod every now and then, he keeps talking, and I think if I can keep him talking long enough, he'll talk himself into sailing. She drew a shuddering breath. Her eyes started stinging again. Only I don't think there's time to let him talk himself into it anymore. Nynaeve, they're going to send Egwene back to Seanchan, and soon. Elayne gasped. But why? She is able to find ore, Min said miserably. A few days, she says, and I don't know if a few days is enough for this man to convince himself to sail. Even if it is, how do we take that shadow-spawned collar off her? How do we get her out of the house? I wish Rand were here. Elayne sighed, and when they both looked at her, she blushed and quickly added, Well, he does have a sword. I wish we had somebody with a sword. 10 of them. 100. It isn't swords or brawn we need now, Nynaeve said, but brains. Men usually think with the hair on their chests. She touched her chest absently, as if feeling something through her coat. Most of them do. We would need an army, Min said. A large army. The Seanchan were outnumbered when they faced the Tarabonners and the Damane, and they won every battle easily, from what I hear. She hurriedly pulled Nynaeve and Elayne to the opposite side of the street as a Damane and sul'dam climbed past them on the other side. She was relieved there was no need for urging. The other two watched the linked women go as warily as she. Since we don't have an army, the 3 of us will have to do it. I hope one of you can think of something I haven't. I've racked my brains, and I always stumble when it comes to the sul'dam, the leash and collar. Sul'dam don't like anyone watching too closely when they open them. I think I can get you inside, if that will help. One of you, anyway. They think of me as a servant, but servants may have visitors, as long as they keep to the servants' quarters. Nynaeve wore a thoughtful frown, but her face cleared almost immediately, taking on a purposeful look. Don't you worry, Min. I have a few ideas. I've not spent my time here idly. You take me to this man. If he is any harder to handle than the village council with their backs up, I will eat this coat. Elayne nodded, grinning, and Min felt the first real hope she had had since arriving in Falme. For an instant, Min found herself reading the auras of the other 2 women. There was danger, but that was to be expected, and new things too. Among the images she had seen before, it was like that sometimes. A man's ring of heavy gold floated above Nynaeve's head, and above Elayne's, a red-hot iron and an axe. They meant trouble, she was sure, but it seemed distant, somewhere in the future. Only for a moment did the reading last, and then all she saw was Elayne and Nynaeve watching her expectantly. It's down near the harbour, she said. The sloping street became more crowded the further down they went. Street peddlers rubbed elbows with merchants who had brought wagons in from the inland villages and would not go out again until winter had come and gone. Hawkers with their trays called to the passers-by. Falmen in embroidered cloaks brushed past farm families in heavy fleece coats. Many people had fled here from villages further from the coast. Min saw no point to it. They had leaped from the possibility of a visit from the Seanchan to the certainty of Seanchan all around them. But she had heard what the Seanchan did when they first came to a village, and she could not blame the villagers too much for fearing another appearance. Everyone bowed when Seanchan walked past, or a curtained palanquin was carried by up the steep street. Min was glad to see Nynaeve and Elayne knew about the bowing. Bare-chested bearers paid no more mind to the people who bent themselves than did arrogant armoured soldiers, but failure to bow would surely catch their eyes. They talked a little as they moved down the street, and she was surprised at first to learn they had been in the town only a few days less than Egwene and herself. After a moment, though, she decided it was no wonder they had not met earlier, not with the crowds in the streets. She had been reluctant to spend time further from Egwene than was necessary. There was always the fear that she would go for her allowed visit and find Egwene gone. And now she will be, unless Nynaeve can think of something. The smell of salt and pitch grew heavy in the air, and gulls cried, wheeling overhead. Sailors appeared in the throng, many still barefoot despite the cold. The inn had been hastily renamed the 3 Plum Blossoms, but part of the word Watcher still showed through the slapdash paintwork on the sign. Despite the crowds outside, the common room was little more than half full. Prices were too high for many people to afford time sitting over ale. Roaring fires on hearths at either end of the room warmed it, and the fat innkeeper was in his shirt-sleeves. He eyed the 3 women, frowning, and Min thought it was her Seanchan dress that stopped him from telling them to leave. Nynaeve and Elayne, in their farm women's coats, certainly did not look as if they had money to spend. The man she was looking for was alone at a table in a corner, in his accustomed place, muttering into his wine. "Do you have time to talk, Captain Domon?" she said. He looked up, brushing a hand across his beard, when he saw she was not alone. She still thought his bare upper lip looked odd with the beard. "So you do bring friends to drink up my coin, do you?" "Well, that Seanchan lord bought my cargo, so coin I have." "Sit." Elayne jumped as he suddenly bellowed, "Innkeeper, mulled wine here." "It's all right," Min told her, taking a place on the end of one of the benches at the table. "He only looks and sounds like a bear." Elayne sat down on the other end, looking doubtful. "A bear, do I be?" Domon laughed. "Maybe I do. But what of you, girl? Have you given over thought of leaving?" "That dress do look Seanchan to me." "Never," Min said fiercely, but the appearance of a serving girl with the steaming, spiced wine made her fall silent. Domon was just as wary. He waited until the girl had gone with his coins before saying, "Fortune prick me, girl, I mean no offence. Most people only want to go on with their lives, whether their lords be Seanchan or any other." Nynaeve leaned her forearms on the table. "We also want to go on with our lives, Captain, but without any Seanchan. I understand you intend to sail soon." "I would sail today if I could," Domon said glumly. "Every 2 or 3 days the Turak do send for me to tell him tales of the old things I have seen. Do I look a gleeman to you? I did think I could spin a tale or two and be on my way, but now I think when I no entertain him any longer, it be an even wager whether he do let me go or have my head cut off. The man do look soft, but he be as hard as iron and as cold-hearted." "Can your ship avoid the Seanchan?" Nynaeve asked. "Fortune prick me, could I make it out of the harbour without a Damane, rip spray to splinters, I can. If I do know, let a Seanchan ship with a Damane come too close once I do make the sea. There be shoal waters all along this coast, and spray do have a shallow draught. I can take her into waters those lumbering Seanchan hulks can no risk. They must be wary of the winds close inshore this time of year, and once I do have spray—" Nynaeve cut him off. "Then we will take passage with you, Captain. There will be 4 of us, and I will expect you to be ready to sail as soon as we're aboard." Domon scrubbed a finger across his upper lip and peered into his wine. "Well, as to that, there still do be the matter of getting out of the harbour, you see. These Damane, what if I tell you you will sail with something better than Damane?" Nynaeve said softly. Min's eyes widened as she realized what Nynaeve intended. Almost under her breath, Elayne murmured, "And you tell me to be careful?" Domon had eyes only for Nynaeve, and they were wary eyes. "What do you mean?" he whispered. Nynaeve opened her coat to fumble at the back of her neck, finally pulling out a leather cord that had been tucked inside her dress. 2 gold rings hung on the cord. Min gasped when she saw one. It was the heavy man's ring she had seen when she read Nynaeve in the street, but she knew it was the other, slighter, and made for a woman's slender finger that made Domon's eyes bulge. A serpent biting its own tail. "You know what this means," Nynaeve said, starting to slit the serpent ring from the cord, but Domon closed his hand over it. "Put it away." His eyes darted uneasily. No one was looking at them that Min could see, but he looked as if he thought everyone was staring. "That ring do be dangerous. If it be seen, as long as you know what it means," Nynaeve said with a calm that made Min envious. She pulled the cord from Domon's hand and retied it around her neck. "I know," he said hoarsely. "I do know what it means. Maybe there do be a chance if you— 4, you say. This girl who do like to listen to my tongue wag, she do be one of the 4, I take it, and you and— He frowned at Elayne. "Surely this child is no one like you." Elayne straightened angrily, but Nynaeve put a hand on her arm and smiled soothingly at Domon. "She travels with me, Captain. You might be surprised by what we can do even before we earn the right to a ring. When we sail, you will have 3 on your ship who can fight Damane if need be." 3, he breathed. "There do be a chance. Maybe." His face brightened for a moment, but as he looked at them, it grew serious again. "I should take you to Spray right now and cast off, but fortune prick me if I can no tell you what you face here if you stay, and maybe even if you go with me. Listen to me, and mark what I do say." He took another cautious look around, and still lowered his voice and chose his words carefully. "I did see a woman who wore a ring like that taken by the Seanchan. A pretty, slender little woman she was, with a big war. a big man with her who did look as if he did know how to use his sword. One of them must have been careless, for the Seanchan did have an ambush laid for them. The big man put 6-7 soldiers on the ground before he did die himself. The woman. Oh, oh, oh. 6 Damane they did put around her, stepping out of the alleys of a sudden. I did think she would. Oh, do something, you know what I mean, but I know nothing of these things. One moment she did look as if she would destroy them all. Then a look of horror did come on her face, and she did scream. They cut her off from the true source. Elayne's face was white. No matter, Nynaeve said calmly, we will not allow the same to be done to us. Mayhap it will be as you say, but I will remember it until I die. Renna, help me. That is what she did scream. And one of the Damane did fall down crying, and they did put one of those collars on the neck of the E. Woman, and I. I did run. He shrugged and rubbed his nose and peered into his wine. I have seen 3 women taken, and I have no stomach for it. I would leave my aged grandmother standing on the dock to sail from here, but I did have to tell you. Egwene said they have 2 prisoners, Min said slowly. Renna a yellow, and she didn't know who the other is. Nynaeve gave her a sharp look, and she fell silent, blushing. From the look on Domon's face, it had not furthered their cause any to tell him the Seanchan held 2 Aes Sedai, not just 1. Yet abruptly he stared at Nynaeve and took a long gulp of wine. Do that be why you are here? To free? Those 2. You did say there would be 3 of you. You know what you need to know, Nynaeve told him briskly. You must be ready to sail on the instant any time in the next 2 or 3 days. Will you do it, or will you remain here to see if they will cut off your head after all? There are other ships, Captain, and I mean to have passage assured on one of them today. Min held her breath. Under the table, her fingers were knotted. Finally, Domon nodded. I will be ready. When they returned to the street, Min was surprised to see Nynaeve sag against the front of the inn as soon as the door closed. Are you ill, Nynaeve? She asked anxiously. Nynaeve drew a long breath and stood up straight, tugging at her coat. With some people, she said, you have to be certain. If you show them one glimmer of doubt, they'll sweep you off in some direction you don't want to go. Light, but I was afraid he was going to say no. Come, we have plans yet to make. There are still 1 or 2 small problems to work out. I hope you don't mind fish, Min, Elayne said. 1 or 2 small problems? Min thought as she followed them. She hoped very much that Nynaeve was not just being certain again. 5. We'll ride forth. Perrin eyed the villagers warily, self-consciously hitching at a too-short cloak embroidered on the chest and with some holes in it, not even patched, but none of them gave him a second glance, despite his strange mix of clothes and the axe on his hip. Hurin had a coat with blue spirals across the chest under his cloak, and Matt wore a pair of baggy trousers that made bunches where they were stuffed into his boots. That had been all they had been able to find that would fit back in the abandoned village. Perrin wondered if this one would be abandoned soon. Half the stone houses were empty, and in front of the inn, up the dirt street from them, 3 ox carts, loaded too heavily in great mounds and everything covered with roped canvas, stood with families gathered around them. As he watched them, huddling together and saying their goodbyes to those who were staying, at least for the time being, Perrin decided it was not lack of interest in strangers on the villagers' part. They were carefully avoiding looking at him and the others. These people had learned not to show curiosity about strangers, even strangers who were obviously not Seanchan. Strangers might be dangerous these days on Tomonhead. They had encountered the same studious indifference in other villages. There were more towns here within a few leagues of the coast, everyone holding itself independent. At any rate, they had until the Seanchan came. I say it's time to go get the horses, Matt said, before they decide to start asking questions. There has to be a first time for it. Hurin was staring at a big, blackened circle of ground that marred the brown grass of the village green. It had a weathered look, but no one had done anything to erase it. Maybe 6 or 8 months ago, he muttered, and it still stinks. The whole village council and their families. Why would they do a thing like that? Who knows why they do anything, Matt muttered. Seanchan don't seem to need a reason for killing people. None I can figure out, anyway. Perrin tried not to look at the charred patch. Hurin, are you sure about Fain? Hurin? It had been hard to make the sniffer look at anything else since they entered the village. Hurin. What? Oh, Fain. Yes. Hurin's nostrils flared, and right away he wrinkled his nose. There's no mistaking that, even old as it is. Makes a murderal smell like roses. He passed through here all right, but I think he was alone. No Trollocs anyway, and if he had any dark friends with him, they hadn't been up to much lately. There was some sort of agitation up by the inn, people shouting and pointing, not at Perrin and the other two, but at something Perrin could not see in the low hills east of the village. Can we get the horses now? Mat said. That could be Seanchan. Perrin nodded, and they broke into a run for where they had tied their horses behind an abandoned house. As Mat and Hurin disappeared around the corner of the house, Perrin looked back toward the inn and stopped in astonishment. The Children of the Light were riding into town, a long column of them. He leaped after the others. White cloaks! They wasted only an instant staring at him in disbelief before they were scrambling into their saddles. Keeping houses between them and the main street of the village, the three galloped out of the village westward, watching over their shoulders for pursuit. Ingtar had told them to avoid anything that might slow them down, and white cloaks asking questions would certainly do that, even if they could manage answers that satisfied. Perrin kept an even closer watch than the other two. He had his own reasons for not wanting to meet white cloaks. The axe in my hands. Light, what I wouldn't give to change that. The lightly wooded hills soon hid the village, and Perrin began to think maybe there was nothing chasing them after all. He reined in and motioned the other two to stop. When they did, eyeing him questioningly, he listened. His ears were sharper than they once had been, but he heard no sounds of hoofbeats. Reluctantly, he reached out with his mind in search of wolves. Almost immediately he found them, a small pack lying up for the day in the hills above the village they had just left. There were moments of astonishment so strong he almost thought it was his own. These wolves had heard rumors, but they had not really believed there were two legs who could talk to their kind. He sweated through the minutes it took to get past introducing himself. He gave the image of young Bull in spite of himself, and added his own smell. According to the custom among wolves, wolves were great ones for formalities on first meetings. But finally, he managed to get his question through. They really had no interest in any two legs who could not talk to them. But at last they glided down to take a look, unseen by the dull eyes of the two legs. After a time, images came back to him what the wolves saw. White-cloaked men on horses crowding around the village, riding among the houses, riding around it, but none leaving, especially not westward. The wolves said all they smelled moving west was himself, and two other two-legs, with three of the hard-footed tall ones. Perrin let go the contact with the wolves gratefully. He was aware of Hurin and Mat looking at him. They aren't following, he said. How can you be sure? Mat demanded. I am, he snapped, then more softly. I just am. Mat opened his mouth and closed it again, and finally said, Well, if they aren't coming after us, I say we go back to Ingtar and get on Fain's trail. That dagger isn't coming any closer just standing here. We can't pick it up again this close to that village, Hurin said. Not without risking running into white cloaks. I don't think Lord Ingtar would appreciate that, and not Verin Sedai neither. Perrin nodded. We'll follow it on a few miles anyway, but keep a close lookout. We can't be too far from Falme now. It won't do any good to avoid the white cloaks and ride right into a Seanchan patrol. As they started out again, he could not help wondering what white cloaks were doing there. Geofram Bornhald peered down the village street, sitting his saddle while the legions spread through the small town and surrounded it. There had been something about the heavy-shouldered man who had dashed out of sight, something that tickled his memory. Yes, of course. The lad who claimed to be a blacksmith. What was his name? Bayer pulled up in front of him, hand on heart. The village is secured, my lord captain. Villagers in heavy sheepskin coats milled uneasily as white-cloaked soldiers herded them together near the overloaded carts in front of the inn. Crying children clung to their mothers' skirts, but no one looked defiant. Dull eyes stared out of the adult faces, waiting passively for whatever was going to happen. For that much, Bornhald was grateful. He had no real desire to make an example of any of these people, and no wish at all to waste time. Dismounting, he tossed his reins to one of the children. See that the men are fed, Bayer. Put the prisoners in the inn with as much food and water as they can carry, then nail all the doors and shutters closed. Make them think I'm leaving some men to stand guard, yes?" Bayer touched his heart again and wheeled his horse to shout orders. The herding began anew into the flat-roofed inn, while other children ransacked houses, searching for hammers and nails. Watching the sullen faces that filed past him, Bornhald thought it should be 2 or 3 days before any of them found enough courage to break out of the inn and find there were no guards. 2 or 3 days was all he needed, but he did not intend to risk alerting the Seanchan to his presence now. Leaving enough men behind to make the questioners believe his entire legion was still scattered across Almouth Plain, he had brought more than 1,000 of the children, nearly the length of Toman Head, without giving alarm, so far as he knew. 3 skirmishes with Seanchan patrols had ended quickly. The Seanchan had grown used to facing already defeated rabble. The Children of the Light had been a deadly surprise. Yet the Seanchan knew how to fight like the Dark One's hordes, and he could not help remembering the one skirmish that had cost him better than 50 men. He was still not sure which of the 2 arrow-riddled women he had stared at afterwards had been the Aes Sedai. Bayer, one of Bornhald's men, handed him water in a pottery cup from one of the carts. It was icy in his throat. The gaunt-faced man swung down from his saddle. "Yes, my Lord Captain. When I engage the enemy, Bayer," Bornhald said slowly, "you will not take part. You will watch from a distance, and you will carry word to my son of what happens." "But my Lord Captain, that is my order, child Bayer," he snapped. "You will obey, yes?" Bayer's back stiffened, and he stared straight ahead. "As you command, my Lord Captain." Bornhald studied him for a moment. The man would do as he was told, but it would be better to give him another reason than letting Dane know how his father had died. It was not as if he did not have knowledge that was urgently needed in Amador. Since that skirmish with the Aes Sedai, was he one of them or both? 30 Seanchan soldiers, good fighters, and 2 women cost me twice the casualties they did. Since then, he no longer expected to live to leave Toman Head. In the small chance the Seanchan did not see to it, very likely the questioners would. "When you have found my son, he should be with Lord Captain Eamon Valda near Tar Valon, and told him you will ride to Amador and report to the Lord Captain Commander. To Pedron Niall personally, child Bayer. You will tell him what we have learned of the Seanchan. I will write it out for you. Be sure he understands that we can no longer count on the Tar Valon witches being content with manipulating events from the shadows. If they fight openly for the Seanchan, we will surely face them elsewhere." He hesitated. That last was the most important of all. They had to know under the Dome of Truth that for all their vaunted oaths, Aes Sedai would march into battle. It gave him a sinking feeling. A world where Aes Sedai wielded the power in battle. He was not sure that he would regret leaving it. But there was one more message he wanted carried to Amador. And, Bayer, tell Pedron Niall how we were used by the questioners. "As you command, my Lord Captain," Bayer said, but Bornhald sighed at the expression on his face. The man did not understand. To Bayer, orders were to be obeyed whether they came from the Lord Captain or the questioners, whatever they were. "I will write that out for you to hand to Pedron Niall as well," he said. He was not sure how much good it would do in any case. A thought came to him, and he frowned at the inn, where some of his men were loudly hammering nails through shutters and doors. "Perrin," he muttered. That was his name. Perrin from the 2 Rivers. The Dark Friend, my Lord Captain, perhaps Bayer. He was not entirely certain himself, but surely a man who seemed to have wolves fight for him could be nothing else. Certainly this Perrin had killed 2 of the children. I thought I saw him when we rode in, but I do not remember anyone among the prisoners who looked like a blacksmith. Their blacksmith left a month ago, my Lord Captain. Some of them were complaining that they'd have been gone before we came, if they had not had to mend their cartwheels themselves. Do you believe it was the man Perrin, my Lord Captain? Whoever it was, he is not accounted for, no? And he may carry word of us to the Seanchan. A Dark Friend would surely do so, my Lord Captain." Bornhald gulped the last of the water and tossed the cup aside. "There will be no meal for the men here, Bayer. I will not let these Seanchan catch me napping, whether it is Perrin of the 2 Rivers or someone else who warns them. Mount the Legion, child Bayer." Far above their heads, a huge, winged shape circled, unnoticed. In the clearing amid the hilltop thicket where they had made their camp, Rand worked the forms with his sword. he wanted to keep from thinking. He had had his chances to search with Hurin for Fain's trail. They all had, in 2s and 3s, so they would not attract attention, and they had all found nothing so far. Now they waited for Mat and Perrin to come back with the sniffer. They should have been back hours ago. Loyal was reading, of course, and there was no telling if his ear-twitching was over his book or the scouting party's lateness. But Uno and most of the Shianaran soldiers sat tensely, oiling their swords, or kept watch through the trees as if they expected Seanchan to appear any moment. Only Verin appeared unconcerned. The Aes Sedai sat on a log beside their small fire, murmuring to herself and writing in the dirt with a long stick. Every so often she would shake her head and scrub it all out with her foot and start over again. All the horses were saddled and ready to go, the Shianaran's animals each tied to a lance driven into the ground. Heron wading in the rushes, Ingtar said. He sat with his back against a tree, sliding a sharpening stone along his sword and watching Rand. You should not be bothering with that one. It leaves you completely open. For an instant, Rand balanced on the ball of one foot, sword held reversed in both hands over his head, then shifted smoothly to the other foot. Lan says it's good for developing balance. It was not easy keeping his balance. In the void, it often seemed he could maintain his equilibrium atop a rolling boulder, but he did not dare assume the void. He wanted too much to trust himself. What you practice too often, you use without thinking. You will put your sword in the other man with that if you're quick, but not before he has his through your ribs. You are practically inviting him. I don't think I could see a man face me so open and not put my sword in him, even knowing he might strike home at me if I did. It's only for balance, Ingtar. Rand wavered on one foot and had to put the other down to keep from falling. He slammed the blade into its scabbard and picked up the grey cloak that had been his disguise. It was moth-eaten and ragged around the bottom, but lined with thick fleece, and the wind was picking up, cold and out of the west. I wish they'd come back. As if his wish had been a signal, Uno spoke up with quiet urgency. Bloody horsemen coming, my lord. Scabbards rattled as men who did not already have their blades out bared them. Some leaped into their saddles, snatching up lances. The tension faded as Hurin led the others into the clearing at a trot, and came again as he spoke. We found the trail, Lord Ingtar. We followed it almost to Falme, Mat said as he dismounted. A flush in his pale cheeks seemed a mocking of health. The skin was tight over his skull. The Shianarans gathered around, as excited as he was. It's just Fain, but there isn't anywhere else he could be going. He must have the dagger. We found white cloaks too, Perrin said, swinging down from his saddle. Hundreds of them. White cloaks? Ingtar exclaimed, frowning. Here. Well, if they do not trouble us, we will not trouble them. Perhaps if the Seanchan are occupied with them, it will help us reach the Horn. His eyes fell on Verin, still seated by the fire. I suppose you will tell me I should have listened to you, Aes Sedai. The man did go to Falme. The wheel weaves as the wheel wheels, Verin said placidly. With Tavern, what happens is what was meant to happen. It may be the pattern demanded these extra days. The pattern puts everything in its place precisely, and when we try to alter it, especially if Tavern are involved, the weaving changes to put us back into the pattern as we were meant to be. There was an uneasy silence that she did not seem to notice. She sketched on idly with the stick. Now, however, I think perhaps we should make plans. The pattern has brought us to Falme at last. The Horn of Valere has been taken to Falme. Ingtar squatted across the fire from her. When enough people say the same thing, I tend to believe it, and the local people say the Seanchan do not seem to care who comes or goes in Falme. I will take Hurin and a few others into the town. Once he follows Fain's trail to the Horn. Well, then we shall see what we shall see. With her foot, Verin scrubbed out a wheel she had drawn in the dirt. In its place she drew 2 short lines that touched at one end. Ingtar and Hurin, and Mat, as he can sense the dagger if he comes close enough. You do want to go, don't you, Mat? Mat appeared torn, but he gave a jerky nod. I have to, don't I? I have to find that dagger. A third line made a bird track. Verin looked sideways at Rand. I'll go, he said. That is why I came. An odd light appeared in the Aes Sedai's eyes, a knowing glimmer that made him uneasy. To help Mat find the dagger, he said sharply, and Ingtar find the horn. And Fain, he added to himself. I have to find Fain if it isn't already too late. Verin scratched a fourth line, turning the bird track to a lopsided star. "And who else?" she said softly. She held the stick poised. "Me," Perrin said, a hair before Loyal chimed in with, "I think I would like to go, too," and Uno and the other Shianarans all began clamoring to join. "Perrin spoke first," Verin said, as if that settled it. She added a fifth line and drew a circle around all five. The hair on Rand's neck stirred. It was the same wheel she had rubbed out in the first place. "5 ride forth," she murmured. "I really would like to see Falme," Loyal said. "I've never seen the Aryth Ocean. Besides, I can carry the chest, if the horn is still in it." "You'd better include me at least, my lord," Uno said. "You and Lord Rand will need another sword at your backs if those bloody Seanchan try to stop you." The rest of the soldiers rumbled the same sentiment. "Do not be silly," Verin said sharply. Her stare silenced them all. "All of you cannot go. No matter how uncaring the Seanchan are about strangers, they will surely take notice of 20 soldiers, and you look like nothing else, even without armor, and 1 or 2 of you will make no difference. 5 is few enough to enter without attracting attention, and it is fitting that 3 of them should be the 3 Taveran among us. No, Loyal, you must stay behind too. There are no Augier on Tommen Head. You would attract as many eyes as all the rest put together." "What about you?" Rand asked. Verin shook her head. "You forget the Damane." Her mouth twisted around the word in distaste. "The only way I could help you would be if I channeled the power, and that would be no help at all if I brought those down on you. Even if they were not close enough to see, one might well feel a woman, or a man for that matter, channeling if care was not taken to keep the power channeled small." She did not look at Rand. To him, she seemed ostentatious in not doing so, and Mat and Perrin were suddenly intent on their own feet. "A man," Ingtar snorted. "Verin Sedai. Why add problems? We have enough already without supposing men channeling. But it would be well if you were there. If we have need of you. No, you 5 must go alone." Her foot scrubbed across the wheel, drawn in the dirt, partially obliterating it. She studied each of them in turn, intent and frowning. 5 will ride forth. For a moment it seemed that Ingtar would ask again, but meeting her level gaze, he shrugged and turned to Hurin. "How long to reach Falme?" The sniffer scratched his head. "If we left now and rode through the night, we could be there by sunrise tomorrow morning." "Then that is what we will do. I'll waste no more time. All of you, saddle your horses. Uno, I want you to bring the others along behind us, but keep out of sight and do not let anyone." "Oh." Rand peered at the sketched wheel as Ingtar went on with his instructions. It was a broken wheel now with only 4 spokes. For some reason, that made him shiver. He realized Verin was watching him, dark eyes bright and intent like a bird's. It took an effort to pull his gaze away and begin getting his things together. "You're letting fancies take you," he told himself irritably. "She can't do anything if she isn't there." Blademaster. The rising sun pushed its crimson edge above the horizon and sent long shadows down the cobblestone streets of Falme toward the harbour. A sea breeze bent the smoke of breakfast cook fires inland from the chimneys. Only the early risers were already out of doors, their breath making steam in the morning cold. Compared to the crowds that would fill the streets in another hour, the town seemed nearly empty. Sitting on an upended barrel in front of a still-closed ironmonger's shop, Nynaeve warmed her hands under her arms and surveyed her army. Min sat on a doorstep across the way, swathed in her Seanchan cloak and eating a wrinkled plum, and Elayne in her fleece coat huddled at the edge of an alley just down the street from her. A large sack, pilfered from the docks, lay neatly folded beside Min. "My army," Nynaeve thought grimly. "But there isn't anybody else." She caught sight of a sul'dam and a Damane climbing the street, a yellow-haired woman wearing the bracelet and a dark woman the collar, both yawning sleepily. The few Falmen sharing the street with them averted their eyes and gave them a wide berth. As far as she could see down toward the harbour, there was not another Seanchan. She did not turn her head the other way. Instead, she stretched and shrugged as if working cold shoulders before settling back as she had been. Min tossed her half-eaten plum aside, glanced casually up the street, and leaned back on the doorpost. The way was clear there too, or she would have put her hands on her knees. Min had started rubbing her hands nervously. and Nynaeve realized that Elayne was now bouncing eagerly on her toes. If they give us away, I'll thump both their heads. But she knew if they were discovered, it would be the Seanchan who would say what happened to all three of them. She was all too aware that she had no real notion of whether what she planned would work or not. It could easily be her own failure that would give them away. Once again, she resolved that if anything went wrong, she would somehow pull attention to herself, while Min and Elayne escaped. She had told them to run if anything went wrong, and let them think she would run too. What she would do then, she did not know, except I won't let them take me alive. Please, light, not that. sul'dam and Damane came up the street until they were bracketed by the three waiting women. A dozen Falmen walked wide of the linked pair. Nynaeve gathered all of her anger, leashed ones and leash holders. They had put their filthy collar on Egwene's neck, and they would put it on hers and Elayne's if they could. She had made Min tell her how sul'dam enforced their will. She was sure Min had kept some back, the worst, but what she told was enough to heat Nynaeve to white-hot fury. In an instant, a white blossom on a black, thorny branch had opened to light, to Seta, and the one power filled her. She knew there was a glow around her, for those who could see it. The pale-skinned sul'dam gave a start, and the dark Damane's mouth fell open, but Nynaeve gave them no chance. It was only a trickle of the power that she channeled, but she cracked it, a whip snapping a dust mote out of the air. The silver collar sprang open and clattered to the cobblestones. Nynaeve heaved a sigh of relief even as she leaped to her feet. The sul'dam stared at the fallen collar as if at a poisonous snake. The Damane put a shaking hand to her throat, but before the woman in the lightning-marked dress had time to move, the Damane turned and punched her in the face. The sul'dam's knees buckled and she almost fell. "Good for you," Elayne shouted. She was already running forward too, and so was Min. Before any of them reached the two women, the Damane took one startled look around, then ran as hard as she could. "We won't hurt you," Elayne called after her. "We are friends. Be quiet," Nynaeve hissed. She produced a handful of rags from her pocket and ruthlessly stuffed them into the gaping mouth of the still staggering sul'dam. Min hastily shook out the sack in a cloud of dust and plunged it over the sul'dam's head, shrouding the woman to the waist. "We are already attracting too much attention." It was true, and yet not entirely true. The four of them stood in a rapidly emptying street, but the people who had decided to be elsewhere were avoiding looking at them. Nynaeve had been counting on that, people doing their best to ignore anything that had to do with Seanchan, to gain them a few moments. They would talk eventually, but in whispers. It might take hours for the Seanchan to learn anything had happened. The hooded woman began to struggle, making rag-muffled shouts from the sack. But Nynaeve and Min threw their arms around her and wrestled her toward a nearby alley. The leash and collar trailed across the cobblestones behind them, clinking. "Pick it up," Nynaeve snapped at Elayne. "It won't bite you." Elayne took a deep breath, then gathered the silver metal gingerly, as if she feared it very well might. Nynaeve felt some sympathy, but not much. Everything rested on each of them doing as they had planned. The sul'dam kicked and tried to throw herself free, but between them, Nynaeve and Min forced her along, down the alley into another, slightly wider passage behind houses, to yet another alley, and at last into a rough wooden shed that had apparently once housed 2 horses by the stalls. Few could afford to keep horses since the Seanchan came, and in a day of Nynaeve's watching, no one had gone near it. The interior had a musty dustiness that spoke of abandonment. As soon as they were inside, Elayne dropped the silver leash and wiped her hands on some straw. Nynaeve channeled another trickle, and the bracelet fell to the dirt floor. The sul'dam squalled and hurled herself about. "Ready?" Nynaeve asked. The other two nodded, and they yanked the sacking off their prisoner. The sul'dam wheezed, blue eyes teary from dust, but her red face was red as much from anger as from the sack. She darted to the door, but they caught her in the first step. She was not weak, yet they were 3, and when they were done, the sul'dam was stripped to her shift, and lying in one of the stalls, bound hand and foot with stout cord, with another piece of cord to keep her from forcing the gag out. Soothing a puffy lip, Min eyed the lightning-panelled dress and soft boots they had laid out. "It might fit you, Nynaeve. It won't fit Elayne or me." Elayne was picking straw out of her hair. "I can see that. You were never a choice anyway, not really. They know you too well." Nynaeve hurriedly removed her own clothes. She tossed them aside and donned the sul'dam's dress. Min helped with the buttons. Nynaeve wiggled her toes in the boots. They were a little tight. The dress was tight, too, across the bosom and loose elsewhere. The hem hung almost to the ground, lower than sul'dam wore them, but the fit would have been even worse on any of the others. Snatching up the bracelet, she took a deep breath and closed it around her left wrist. The ends merged, and it seemed solid. It did not feel like anything except a bracelet. She had been afraid that it would. "Get the dress, Elayne." They had dyed a pair of dresses, one of hers and one of Elayne's, to the grey domain were, or as close as they could manage, and hidden them here. Elayne did not move except to stare at the open collar and lick her lips. "Elayne, you have to wear it. Too many of them have seen Min for her to do it. I would have worn it if this dress had fit you instead." She thought she would have gone mad if she had had to wear the collar. That was why she could not make her voice sharp with Elayne now. "I know," Elayne sighed. "I just wish I knew more of what it does to you." She drew her red gold hair out of the way. "Min, help me, please." Min began undoing the buttons down the back of her dress. Nynaeve managed to pick up the silver collar without flinching. There is one way to find out. With only a moment of hesitation, she bent and snapped it around the neck of the sul'dam. She deserves it if anyone does, she told herself firmly. She might be able to tell us something useful anyway. The blue-eyed woman glanced at the leash trailing from her neck to Nynaeve's wrist, then glared up at her contemptuously. "It doesn't work that way," Min said, but Nynaeve barely heard. She was aware of the other woman, aware of what she was feeling, cord digging into her ankles and into her wrists behind her back, the rank fish taste of the rags in her mouth, straw pricking her through the thin cloth of her shift. It was not as if she, Nynaeve, felt these things, but in her head was a lump of sensations that she knew belonged to the sul'dam. She swallowed, trying to ignore them. They would not go away, and addressed the bound woman. "I won't hurt you if you answer my questions truthfully. We aren't Seanchan, but if you lie to me..." She lifted the leash threateningly. The woman's shoulders shook, and her mouth curled around the gag in a sneer. It took Nynaeve a moment to realize the sul'dam was laughing. Her mouth tightened, but then a thought came to her. That bundle of sensation inside her head seemed to be everything physical that the other woman felt. Experimentally, she tried adding to it. Eyes suddenly bulging out of her head, the sul'dam gave a cry that the gag only partially stopped. Fanning her hands behind her as if trying to ward off something, she humped through the straw in a vain effort to escape. Nynaeve gaped and hastily rid herself of the extra feeling she had added. The sul'dam sagged, weeping. "What? What did you do to her?" Elayne asked faintly. Min only stared, her mouth hanging open. Nynaeve answered gruffly, "The same thing Sheriam did to you when you threw a cup at Marith. Light, but this is a filthy thing." Elayne gulped loudly. "Oh, but an Adam isn't supposed to work that way," Min said. "They always claimed it won't work on any woman who cannot channel. I do not care how it is supposed to work, so long as it does." Nynaeve seized the silver metal leash right where it joined the collar and pulled the woman up enough to look her in the eyes. Frightened eyes, she saw. "You listen to me, and listen well. I want answers, and if I don't get them, I'll make you think I have had the hide off you." Stark terror rolled across the woman's face, and Nynaeve's stomach heaved as she suddenly realized the sul'dam had taken her literally. If she thinks I can, it's because she knows. That is what these leashes are for. She took firm hold of herself to stop from clawing the bracelet off her wrist. Instead, she hardened her face. "Are you ready to answer me? Or do you need more convincing?" The frantic head-shaking was answer enough. When Nynaeve removed the gag, the woman only paused to swallow once before babbling, "I will not report you. I swear it. Only take this from my neck. I have gold. Take it. I swear I will never tell anyone." "Be quiet," Nynaeve snapped, and the woman shut her mouth immediately. "What is your name?" "Seta. Please. I will answer you, but please take it off. If anyone sees it on me." Seta's eyes rolled down to stare at the leash, then squeezed shut. "Please," she whispered. Nynaeve realized something. She could never make Elayne wear that collar. "Best we get on with it," Elayne said firmly. She was down to her shift too now. give me a moment to put this other dress on, and put your own clothes back on, Nynaeve said. Someone has to pretend to be a Damane, Elayne said, or we will never reach Egwene. That dress fits you, and it cannot be Min. That leaves me, I said. Put your clothes on. We have somebody to be our leashed one. Nynaeve tugged at the leash that held Seta, and the sul'dam gasped. No, no, please. If anyone sees me, she cut off at Nynaeve's cold stare. As far as I'm concerned, you are worse than a murderer, worse than a dark friend. I can't think of anything worse than you. The fact that I have to wear this thing on my wrist to be the same as you for even an hour sickens me. So if you think there is anything I'll balk at doing to you, think again. You don't want to be seen? Odd. Good. Neither do we. No one really looks at a Damane, though. As long as you keep your head down the way a leashed one is supposed to, no one will even notice you. But you had better do the best you can to make sure the rest of us aren't noticed either. If we are, you surely will be seen, and if that is not enough to hold you, I promise you I'll make you curse the first kiss your mother ever gave your father. Do we understand each other? Yes, Seta said faintly. I swear it. Nynaeve had to remove the bracelet in order for them to slide Elayne's grey-dyed dress down the leash and over Seta's head. It did not fit the woman well, being loose at the bosom and tight across the hips, but Nynaeve's would have been as bad, and too short besides. Nynaeve hoped people really did not look at Damane. She put the bracelet back on reluctantly. Elayne gathered up Nynaeve's clothes, wrapped the other dyed dress around them, and made a bundle for a woman in farm clothes to be carrying as she followed a sul'dam and a Damane. Gawain will eat his heart out when he hears about this, she said, and laughed. It sounded forced. Nynaeve looked at her closely, then at Min. It was time for the dangerous part. Are you ready? Elayne's smile faded. I am ready, Min said curtly. Where are you? We are, Going, Seta said, quickly adding, if I may ask. Into the lion's den, Elayne told her. To dance with the Dark One, Min said. Nynaeve sighed and shook her head. What they are trying to say is, we are going where all the Damane are kept, and we intend to free one of them. Seta was still gaping in astonishment when they hustled her out of the shed. Bayle Domon watched the rising sun from the deck of his ship. The docks were already beginning to bustle, though the streets leading up from the harbour stood largely empty. A gull perched on a piling stared at him. Gulls had pitiless eyes. Are you sure about this, Captain? Hurin asked. If the Seanchan wonder what we're all doing aboard. You just make certain there do be an axe near every mooring line, Domon said curtly. And, Hurin, do any man try to cut a line before those women are aboard, I will split his skull. What if they don't come, Captain? What if it's Seanchan soldiers instead? Settle your bowels, man. If soldiers come, I will make a run for the harbour mouth, and the light have mercy on us all. But until soldiers do come, I mean to wait for those women. Now go look as if you are no doing anything. Domon turned back to peering up into the town, toward where the Damane were held. His fingers drummed a nervous tattoo on the railing. The breeze from the sea brought the smell of breakfast cook fires to Rand's nose and tried to flap at his moth-eaten cloak, but he held it closed with one hand as Red neared the town. There had not been a coat to fit him in the clothes they had found, and he thought it best to keep the fine silver embroidery on his sleeves and the herons on his collar hidden. The Seanchan attitude toward conquered people carrying weapons might not extend to those with heron-marked swords either. The first shadows of morning stretched out ahead of him. He could just see Hurin riding in among the wagon yards and horse lots. Only one or two men moved among the lines of merchant wagons, and they wore the long aprons of wheelwrights or blacksmiths. Ingtar, the first in, was already out of sight. Perrin and Mat followed behind Rand at spaced intervals. He did not look back to check on them. There was not supposed to be anything to connect them, 5 men coming into Falme at an early hour, but not together. The horse lots surrounded him, horses already crowding the fences, waiting to be fed. Hurin put his head out from between 2 stables, their doors still closed and barred, saw Rand and motioned to him before ducking back. Rand turned the bay stallion that way. Hurin stood holding his horse by the reins. He had on one of the long vests instead of his coat, and despite the heavy cloak that hid his short sword and sword-breaker, he shivered with the cold. Lord Ingtar's back there, he said, nodding down the narrow passage. He says we'll leave the horses here and go the rest of the way on foot." As Rand dismounted, the sniffer added, "Fain went right down that street, Lord Rand. I can almost smell it from here." Rand led Red down the way to where Ingtar had already tied his own horse behind the stable. The Shianaran did not look very much a lord in a dirty fleece coat, with holes worn through the leather in several places, and his sword looked odd, belted over it. His eyes had a feverish intensity. Tying Red alongside Ingtar's stallion, Rand hesitated over his saddlebags. He had not been able to leave the banner behind. He did not think any of the soldiers would have gone into the bags, but he could not say the same for Verin, nor predict what she would do if she found the banner. Still, it made him uneasy to have it with him. He decided to leave the saddlebags tied behind his saddle. Mat joined them, and a few moments later Hurin came with Perrin. Mat wore baggy trousers stuffed into the tops of his boots, and Perrin his too-short cloak. Rand thought they all looked like villainous beggars, but they had all passed largely unnoticed in the villages. "Now," Ingtar said, "let us see what we see." They strolled out to the dirt street as if they had no particular destination in mind, talking among themselves, and ambled past the wagon yards onto sloping cobblestone streets. Rand was not sure what he himself said, much less anyone else. Ingtar's plan had been for them to look like any other group of men walking together, but there were all too few people out of doors. 5 men made a crowd on those cold morning streets. They walked in a bunch, but it was Hurin who led them, sniffing the air and turning up this street and down that. The rest turned when he did, as if that was what they had intended all along. "He's crisscrossed this town," Hurin muttered, grimacing. "His smell is everywhere, and it stinks so, it's hard to tell old from new. At least I know he's still here. Some of it cannot be older than a day or two, I'm sure." "I am sure," he added less doubtfully. A few more people began to appear. Here, a fruit peddler setting his wares on tables. There, a fellow hurrying along with a big roll of parchments under his arm, and a sketchboard slung across his back, a knife sharpener oiling the shaft of his grinding wheel on its barrow. 2 women walked by, headed the other way, one with downcast eyes and a silver collar around her neck, the other in a dress worked with lightning bolts, holding a coiled silver leash. Rand's breath caught. It was an effort not to look back at them. What was that? "Oh, oh." Mat's eyes were open wide, staring out of the hollows of his eye sockets. "Was that a Damane?" "That is the way they were described," Ingtar said curtly. "Hurin, are we going to walk every street in this shadow-cursed town?" "He's been everywhere, Lord Ingtar," Hurin said. "His stench is everywhere." They had come into an area where the stone houses were 3 and 4 stories high, as big as inns. They rounded a corner, and Rand was taken aback by the sight of a score of Seanchan soldiers standing guard in front of a big house on one side of the street, and by the sight of 2 women in lightning-marked dresses talking on the doorsteps of another across from it. A banner flapped in the wind over the house the soldiers protected, a golden hawk clutching lightning bolts. Nothing marked out the house where the women talked except themselves. The officer's armor was resplendent in red and black and gold, his helmet gilded and painted to look like a spider's head. Then Rand saw the 2 big, leathery-skinned shapes crouched among the soldiers and missed a step. Grolm. There was no mistaking those wedge-shaped heads with their 3 eyes. They can't be. Perhaps he was really asleep and this was all a nightmare. Maybe we haven't even left for Falme yet. The others stared at the beasts as they walked past the guarded house. "What in the name of the Lige are they?" Mat asked. Yorin's eyes seemed as big as his face. "Lord Rand, they're... Those are... It doesn't matter," Rand said. After a moment, Hurin nodded. "We are here for the Horn," Ingtar said, "not to stare at Seanchan monsters. Concentrate on finding Fain, Hurin." The soldiers barely glanced at them. The street ran straight down to the round harbour. Rand could see ships anchored down there, tall, square-looking ships with high masts, small in that distance. "He's been here a lot." Hurin scrubbed at his nose with the back of his hand. "The street stinks of layer on layer on layer of him. I think he might have been here as late as yesterday, Lord Ingtar. Maybe last night." Mat suddenly clutched his coat with both hands. "It's in there," he whispered. He turned around and walked backwards, peering at the tall house with the banner. "The dagger is in there. I didn't even notice it before because of those things, but I can feel it." Perrin poked a finger in his ribs. "Well, stop that before they start wondering why you're goggling at them like a fool." Rand glanced over his shoulder. The officer was looking after them. Matt turned back around sullenly. "Are we just going to keep on walking? It's in there, I tell you." "The horn is what we are after," Ingtar growled. "I mean to find Fain and make him tell me where it is." He did not slow down. Matt said nothing, but his entire face was a plea. "I have to find Fain too," Ram thought. "I have to." But when he looked at Matt's face, he said, "Ingtar, if the dagger is in that house, Fain likely is too. I can't see him letting the dagger or the horn, either one, far out of his sight." Ingtar stopped. After a moment he said, "It could be, but we will never know from out here." "We could watch for him to come out," Rand said. "If he comes out at this time of the morning, then he's spent the night there. And I'll wager where he sleeps is where the horn is. If he does come out, we can be back to Verin by midday and have a plan made before nightfall." "I do not mean to wait for Verin," Ingtar said, "and neither will I wait for night. I've waited too long already. I mean to have the horn in my hands before the sun sets again." "But we don't know, Ingtar. I know the dagger is in there," Matt said. "And Hurin says, Fain was here last night." Ingtar overrode Hurin's attempts to qualify that. "It is the first time you have been willing to say anything closer than a day or two. We're going to take back the horn now." "Now, how?" Rand said. The officer was no longer watching them, but there were still at least 20 soldiers in front of the building. And a pair of Graum. This is madness. There can't be Graum here. Thinking it did not make the beasts disappear, though. "There seem to be gardens behind all these houses," Ingtar said, looking around thoughtfully. "If one of those alleys runs by a garden wall..." Sometimes men are so busy guarding their front, they neglect their back. "Come." He headed straight for the nearest narrow passage between two of the tall houses. Hurin and Matt trotted right after him. Rand exchanged looks with Perrin. His curly-haired friend gave a resigned shrug and they followed too. The alley was barely wider than their shoulders, but it ran between high garden walls until it crossed another alley big enough for a push-barrow or small cart. That was cobblestone too, but only the backs of buildings looked down on it, shuttered windows and expanses of stone, and the high back walls of gardens overtopped by nearly leafless branches. Ingtar led them along that alley until they were opposite the waving banner. Taking his steel-backed gauntlets from under his coat, he put them on and leaped up to catch the top of the wall, then pulled himself up enough to peek over. He reported in a low monotone. "Oh, trees, flower beds, walks. There isn't a soul to be. Wait, a guard. One man isn't even wearing his helmet. Count to 50, then follow me." He swung a boot to the top of the wall and rolled over inside, disappearing before Rand could say a word. Matt began to count slowly. Rand held his breath. Perrin fingered his axe, and Hurin gripped the hilts of his weapons. 50. Hurin scrambled up and over the wall before the word was well out of Matt's mouth. Perrin went right beside him. Rand thought Matt might need some help. He looked so pale and drawn, but he gave no sign of it as he scrambled up. The stone wall provided plenty of handholds, and moments later Rand was crouched on the inside with Matt and Perrin and Hurin. The garden was in the grip of deep autumn, flower beds empty except for a few evergreen shrubs, tree branches nearly bare. The wind that rippled the banner stirred dust across the flagstone walks. For a moment Rand could not find Ingtar. Then he saw the Shianaran flat against the back wall of the house, motioning them on with sword in hand. Rand ran in a crouch, more conscious of the windows blankly peering down from the house than of his friends running beside him. It was a relief to press himself against the house beside Ingtar. Matt kept muttering to himself, "It's in there. I can feel it." "Where is the guard?" Rand whispered. "Dead," Ingtar said. The man was overcompetent. He never even tried to raise a cry. "I hid his body under one of those bushes." Rand stared at him. The Seanchan was overconfident. The only thing that kept him from going back right then was Matt's anguished murmurs. "We are almost there." Ingtar sounded as if he were speaking to himself too. "Almost there. Come." Rand drew his sword as they started up the back steps. He was aware of Hurin unlimbering his short-bladed sword and notched swordbreaker, and Perrin reluctantly drawing his axe from the loop on his belt. The hallway inside was narrow. A half-open door to their right smelled like a kitchen. Several people were moving about in that room. There was an indistinguishable sound of voices, and occasionally the soft clatter of a pot lid. Ingtar motioned Mat to lead, and they crept by the door. Rand watched the narrowing opening until they were around the next corner. A slender young woman with dark hair came out of a door ahead of them, carrying a tray with one cup. They all froze. They all froze. She turned the other way without looking in their direction. Rand's eyes widened. Her long white robe was all but transparent. She vanished around another corner. "Did you see that?" Mat said hoarsely. "You could see right through." Ingtar clapped a hand over Mat's mouth and whispered, "Keep your mind on why we are here. Now find it. Find the horn for me." Mat pointed to a narrow set of winding stairs. They climbed a flight, and he led them toward the front of the house. The furnishings in the hallways were sparse and seemed all curves. Here and there a tapestry hung on a wall, or a folding screen stood against it, each painted with a few birds on branches or a flower or two. A river flowed across one screen, but aside from rippling water and narrow strips of riverbank, the rest of it was blank. All around them Rand could hear the sounds of people stirring, slippers scuffing on the floor, soft murmurs of speech. He did not see anyone, but he could imagine it all too well. Someone stepping into the hall to see 5 slinking men with weapons in their hands, shouting an alarm. "Bob! Bob! Bob!" "In there," Mat whispered, pointing to a big pair of sliding doors ahead, carved handholds, their only ornamentation. "At least the dagger is." Ingtar looked at Hurin. The sniffer slid the doors open, and Ingtar leaped through with his sword ready. There was no one there. Rand and the others hurried inside, and Hurin quickly closed the doors behind them. Painted screens hid all the walls and any other doors, and veiled the light coming through windows that had to overlook the street. At one end of the big room stood a tall, circular cabinet. At the other was a small table, the lone chair on the carpet, turned to face it. Rand heard Ingtar gasp, but he only felt like heaving a sigh of relief. The curling golden horn of Valere sat on a stand on the table. Below it, the ruby in the hilt of the ornate dagger caught the light. Mat darted to the table, snatching horn and dagger. "We have it," he crowed, shaking the dagger in his fist. "We have both of them." "Not so loud," Perrin said with a wince. "We don't have them out of here yet." His hands were busy on the haft of his axe. They seemed to want to be holding something else. The Horn of Valere. There was sheer awe in Ingtar's voice. He touched the horn hesitantly, tracing a finger along the silver script inlaid around the bell and mouthing the translation, then pulled his hand back with a shiver of excitement. "It is. By the light, it is. I am saved." Hurin was moving the screens that hid the windows. He shoved the last out of his way and peered into the street below. "Those soldiers are all still there, looking like they've took root." He shuddered. "Or those things too." Rand went to join him. The two beasts were Graum, there was no denying it. How did they? Bob. As he lifted his eyes from the street, words died. He was looking over a wall into the garden of the big house across the street. He could see where further walls had been torn down, joining other gardens to it. Women sat on benches there, or strolled along the walks, always in pairs. Women linked, neck to wrist, by silver leashes. One of the women, with a collar around her neck, looked up. He was too far to make out her face clearly, but for an instant it seemed that their eyes met, and he knew. The blood drained from his face. "Egwene," he breathed. "What are you talking about?" Mat said. "Egwene is safe in Tar Valon." "I wish I were." "She's here?" Rand said. The two women were turning, walking toward one of the buildings on the far side of the joined gardens. "She is there, right across the street." "Oh, light, she's wearing one of those collars. Are you sure?" Perrin said. He came to peer from the window. "I don't see her, Rand. And I could recognize her if I did, even at this distance." "I am sure," Rand said. The two women disappeared into one of the houses that faced the next street over. His stomach was twisted into a knot. "She is supposed to be safe. She's supposed to be in the White Tower. I have to get her out. The rest of you." "So," the slurring voice was as soft as the sound of the doors sliding in their tracks, "you are not who I expected." For a brief moment, Rand stared. The tall man with the shaven head who had stepped into the room wore a long, trailing blue robe, and his fingernails were so long that Rand wondered if he could handle anything. The two men standing obsequiously behind him had only half their dark hair shaved, the rest hanging in a dark braid down each man's right cheek. One of them cradled a sheathed sword in his arms. It was only a moment he had for staring, then screens toppled to reveal, at either end of the room, a doorway crowded with 4 or 5 Seanchan soldiers, bareheaded but armored, and swords in hand. "You are in the presence of the High Lord Turak," the man who carried the sword began, staring at Rand and the others angrily, but a brief motion of a finger with a blue lacquered nail cut him short. The other servant stepped forward with a bow and began undoing Turak's robe. "When one of my guards was found dead," the shaven-headed man said calmly, "I suspected the man who calls himself Fain. I have been suspicious of him since Juan died so mysteriously, and he has always wanted that dagger." He held out his arms for the servant to remove his robe. Despite his soft, almost singing voice, hard muscles roped his arms and smooth chest, which was bare to a blue sash holding wide white trousers that seemed made of hundreds of pleats. He sounded uninterested and indifferent to the blades in their hands. "And now to find strangers with not only the dagger, but the horn. It will please me to kill 1 or 2 of you for disturbing my morning. Those who survive will tell me of who you are and why you came." He stretched out a hand without looking. The man with the scabbarded sword laid the hilt in the hand and drew the heavy, curved blade. "I would not have the horn damaged." Turak gave no other signal, but one of the soldiers stalked into the room and reached for the horn. Rand did not know whether he should laugh or not. The man wore armor, but his arrogant face seemed as oblivious to their weapons as Turak was. Matt put an end to it. As the Seanchan reached out his hand, Matt slashed it with the ruby-hilted dagger. With a curse, the soldier leaped back, looking surprised. And then he screamed. It chilled the room, held everyone where they stood in astonishment. The trembling hand he held up in front of his face was turning black, darkness creeping outwards from the bleeding gash that crossed his palm. He opened his mouth wide and howled, clawing at his arm, then his shoulder. Kicking, jerking, he toppled to the floor, thrashing on the silken carpet, shrieking as his face grew black and his dark eyes bulged like overripe plums, until a dark, swollen tongue gagged him. He twitched, choking raggedly, heels drumming, and did not move again. Every bit of his exposed flesh was black as putrid pitch and looked ready to burst at a touch. Matt licked his lips and swallowed. His grip shifted uneasily on the dagger. Even Turak stared, open-mouthed. "You see," Ingtar said softly, "we are no easy meat." Suddenly he leaped over the corpse toward the soldier still goggling at what was left of the man who had stood at their shoulders only moments before. "Shinoa," he cried. "Follow me." Hurin leaped after him and the soldiers fell back before them, the sounds of steel on steel rising. The Seanchan at the other end of the room started forward as Ingtar moved, but then they were falling back too before Matt's thrusting dagger even more than from the axe. Perrin swung with wordless snarls. In the space of heartbeats, Rand stood alone facing Turak, who held his blade upright before him. His moment of shock was gone. His eyes were sharp on Rand's face. The black and swollen body of one of his soldiers might as well not have existed. It did not seem to exist for the two servants either, any more than Rand and his sword existed, or the sounds of fighting, fading now from the rooms to either side, out into the house. The servants had begun calmly folding Turak's robe as soon as the High Lord took his sword, and had not looked up even for the dead soldier's shrieks. Now they knelt beside the door and watched with impassive eyes. "I suspected it might come to you and me." Turak spun his blade easily, a full circle one way, then the other, his long-nailed fingers moving delicately on the hilt. His fingernails did not seem to hamper him at all. "You are young. Let us see what is required to earn the heron on this side of the ocean." Suddenly, Rand saw. Standing tall on Turak's blade was a heron. With the little training he had, he was face to face with a real Blademaster. Hastily he tossed the fleece-lined cloak aside, ridding himself of weight and encumbrance. Turak waited. Rand desperately wanted to seek the void. It was plain he would need every shred of ability he could muster, and even then his chances of leaving the room alive would be small. He had to leave alive. Egwene was almost close enough for him to shout to her, and he had to free her somehow. But Saidin waited in the void. The thought made his heart leap with eagerness at the same time that it turned his stomach. But just as close as Egwene were those other women. Damane, if he touched Saidin, and if he could not stop himself channeling, they would know, Verin had told him. Know and wonder. So many, so close. He might survive Turak, only to die facing Damane, and he could not die before Egwene was free. Rand raised his blade. Turak glided toward him on silent feet. Blade rang on blade like hammer on anvil. From the first, it was clear to Rand that the man was testing him, pushing only hard enough to see what he could do, then pushing a little harder, then just a little harder still. It was quick wrists and quick feet that kept Rand alive as much as skill. Without the void, he was always half a heartbeat behind. The tip of Turak's heavy sword made a stinging trench just under his left eye. A flap of coat sleeve hung away from his shoulder, the darker for being wet. Under a neat slash beneath his right arm, precise as a tailor's cut, he could feel warm dampness spreading down his ribs. There was disappointment on the High Lord's face. He stepped back with a gesture of disgust. "Where did you find that blade, boy? Or do they here truly award the heron to those no more skilled than you? No matter. Make your peace. It is time to die." He came on again. The void enveloped Rand. Saidin flowed toward him, glowing with the promise of the one power, but he ignored it. It was no more difficult than ignoring a barbed thorn twisting in his flesh. He refused to be filled with the power, refused to be one with the male half of the true source. He was one with the sword in his hands, one with the floor beneath his feet, one with the walls. One with Turak. He recognized the forms the High Lord used. They were a little different from what he had been taught, but not enough. The swallow takes flight, met parching the silk. Moon on the water, met the wood grouse dances. Ribbon in the air, met stones, falling from the cliff. They moved about the room as in a dance, and their music was steel against steel. Disappointment and disgust faded from Turak's dark eyes, replaced by surprise, then concentration. Sweat appeared on the High Lord's face as he pressed Rand harder. Lightning of three prongs met leaf on the breeze. Rand's thoughts floated outside the void apart from himself, hardly noticed. It was not enough. He faced a Blademaster, and with the void and every ounce of his skill, he was barely managing to hold his own. Barely. He had to end it before Turak finally did. Saidin? No. Sometimes it is necessary to sheathe the sword in your own flesh, but that would not help Egwene either. He had to end it now. Now. Turak's eyes widened as Rand glided forward. So far he had only defended, now he attacked, all out. The boar rushes down the mountain. Every movement of his blade was an attempt to reach the High Lord. Now all Turak could do was retreat and defend, down the length of the room, almost to the door. In an instant, while Turak still tried to face the boar, Rand charged. The river undercuts the bank. He dropped to one knee, blade slashing across. He did not need Turak's gasp, or the feel of resistance to his cut to know. He heard two thumps and turned his head, knowing what he would see. He looked down the length of his blade, wet and red, to where the High Lord lay. Sword tumbled from his limp hand, a dark dampness staining the birds woven in the carpet under his body. Turak's eyes were still open, but already filmed with death. The void shook. He had faced Trollocs before, faced Shadowspawn. Never before had he confronted a human being with a sword, except in practice or bluff. "I just killed a man." The void shook, and Saidin tried to fill him. Desperately he clawed free, breathing hard as he looked around. He gave a start when he saw the two servants still kneeling beside the door. He had forgotten them, and now he did not know what to do about them. Neither man appeared armed, yet all they had to do was shout. "Orb, orb, orb." They never looked at him or at each other. Instead they stared silently at the High Lord's body. They produced daggers from under their robes, and he tightened his grip on the sword, but each man placed the point to his own breast. "From birth to death," they intoned in unison, "I serve the blood," and plunged the daggers into their own hearts. They folded forward almost peacefully, heads to the floor, as if bowing deeply to their lord. Rand stared at them in disbelief. Mad, he thought. Maybe I will go mad, but they already were. He was getting to his feet shakily when Ingtar and the others came running back. They all bore nicks and cuts. The leather of Ingtar's coat was stained in more than one place. Mat still had the horn and his dagger, its blade darker than the ruby in its hilt. Perrin's axe was red too, and he looked as if he might be sick at any moment. "You dealt with them?" Ingtar said, looking at the bodies. "Then we're done if no alarm is given. Those fools never cried for help, not once." "I will see if the guards heard anything," Hurin said, and darted for the window. Mat shook his head. "Rand, these people are crazy. I know I've said that before, but these people really are. Those servants. Oh. Rand held his breath, wondering if they had all killed themselves. Mat said, "Whenever they saw us fighting, they fell on their knees, put their faces to the floor, and wrapped their arms around their heads. They never moved or cried out, never tried to help the soldiers or give an alarm. They're still there as far as I know." "I would not count on them staying on their knees," Ingtar said dryly. "We are leaving now as fast as we can run." "You go," Rand said. "Egwene, you fool," Ingtar snapped. "We have what we came for. The Horn of Valere, the hope of salvation. What can one girl count, even if you love her, alongside the horn and what it stands for? The Dark One can have the horn for all I care. What does finding the horn count if I abandon Egwene to this? If I did that, the horn couldn't save me. The Creator couldn't save me. I would damn myself." Ingtar stared at him, his face unreadable. "You mean that exactly, don't you?" "Something's happening out here," Hurin said urgently. "A man just came running up, and they're all milling like fish in a bucket. Wait, the officer is coming inside." "Go," Ingtar said. He tried to take the horn, but Mat was already running. Rand hesitated, but Ingtar grabbed his arm and pulled him into the hall. The others were streaming after Mat. Perrin only gave Rand one pained look before he went. "You cannot save the girl if you stand here and die." He ran with them. Part of him hated himself for running, but another part whispered, "I'll come back. I'll free her somehow." By the time they reached the bottom of the narrow, winding staircase, he could hear a man's deep voice raised in the front part of the house, angrily demanding that someone stand up and speak. A serving girl in her nearly transparent robe knelt at the bottom of the stairs, and a grey-haired woman all in white wool with a long flowery apron knelt by the kitchen door. They were both exactly as Mat had described, faces to the floor and arms wrapped around their heads, and they did not stir a hair as Rand and the others hurried by. He was relieved to see the motions of breathing. They crossed the garden at a dead run, climbing over the back wall rapidly. Ingtar cursed when Mat tossed the Horn of Valere ahead of him, and tried again to take it when he dropped outside. But Mat snatched it up with a quick, "It isn't even scratched," and scampered up the alley. More shouts rose from the house they had just left. A woman screamed, and someone began tolling a gong. "I will come back for her." Somehow, Rand sped after the others as fast as he could.